Once again, thanks for being at the 9th Annual South Wireless Summit. Our next panel is Rural Fixed Wireless. Great to have Bill D'Agostino here as our moderator. Please like to call Bill up to start. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, everybody, for being here. You know, when we think about preparing all these bios and you go through and you update them, as I was reflecting back on preparing mine for this event, there was a couple of things that came to mind. One, I was here when we launched some of the first wireless networks in the country. And two, I've been involved in every G since then. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure there's a time throughout that entire career that I can see as much excitement and future and potential in this industry than I see today from a funding and a need standpoint. So it's really interesting to have a chance to talk about that today. I have an incredible panel of people that have been working on fixed wireless, many of them working with me as a partner at Frontier, some directly at Frontier with me over the past 3.5 years as we've built out fixed wireless. So let me jump in and introduce those to you. We have Carlos Cardona. Carlos is the Director of Wireless and Architecture and Engineering for Frontier. So he makes my life crazy. Terry Jones is the Director of Sales for the Americas and Business Development for Blink Networks, LLC. Adi Nativ is the Vice President and Global Business Development for Radwin. Terrell Turner is the Director of Strategic Sales for T3 Broadband. Talia Jemison is the Vertical Markets Manager for American Tower. And Jessica Collins is the Vertical Market Manager for Crown Castle. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for all the preparation you've done. Look forward to your thoughts and your comments today. So as I said, I don't know if there could be a better time to be in the right industry at the right time with an industry that's really prepared to deliver on some incredible opportunity going forward. Let's talk about that just a little bit. As I was doing the research for this, there's more than 30 million Americans today that have broadband infrastructure that doesn't provide minimally acceptable speeds. 30 million Americans. So I see building high-speed infrastructure to cover 100% of rural America as the industry's next greatest challenge. So there's some parallels to this. If you look back, generations ago, the federal government recognized that without electricity, we weren't going to be able to compete as a nation. So what did they do about that? They passed the 1936 Rural Electrification Act, and that provided the funding to deliver electricity to virtually every person in the country. So now, with COVID, with the advancement and the need to be connected, we see something a little bit different starting to form. Broadband is becoming the new electricity. And we have to have that across the country in order to be able to compete in the new modern economy. So there is a digital divide. You'll hear that talked about quite a bit. But I believe the need to accelerate the deployment of rural broadband and the funding have never been more aligned. And I'm going to talk about that just a little bit. But first, a couple of things on the digital divide. 35% of rural Americans lack access to broadband today. 37% of rural students are without that access or without internet at home. And by the way, it also affects suburban and urban students. So as I mentioned, COVID-19 has made broadband a national priority. And there's been a significant response to it. If you can see the triangle on the right of the slide here, The one thing I'd like you to take away from my message is that there is up to $120 billion available today and over the next 10 years to bridge the digital divide. So if somebody tells you it's a funding issue, it's not a funding issue. It's a meeting of the minds, it's finding the right opportunities, it's putting the right partnerships together, but there is $120 billion available over the next 10 years to begin to close that digital divide. To me, that's the greatest challenge of our industry as you look forward, and what a great place it is and what a great place it would be to work over the next 10, 15, 20 years as we start to develop and deploy the solutions to change that situation. So we're here to talk about fixed wireless just a little bit. You know, fixed wireless isn't an answer to everything, but it surely has found its space in rural America. And it surely has found a place to be able to work alongside all the other technologies that are deployed to help bridge that gap. And the folks here today are going to talk a lot about that. So yes, there's some examples of where wireless fits. You know, there are some trade-offs, and many of those you already know. Speed and spectrum are not currently at the same rate as fiber. But over the past 3 years, with Carlos's help, Frontier's deployed 55,000 households that are covered by fixed wireless. We've learned a few things, and this panel is going to share a lot of that with you, so I'm not going to go into that today. But let me start with Carlos Cardona. And Carlos, let me ask you, tell us about Frontier's experience with fixed wireless technology. Let me invite you up here to come talk about that. And tell us how you see things evolving over the next few years from a technology standpoint.
Thank you, Bill. All right, Bill introduced me. I'm the one that caused problems for him. My job in Frontier is to research the technology, research a solution, embed it into the current systems, and then hand it over to Bill for deployment and operation. So how we started in Frontier, the Frontier process started about 7 years ago and started evolving from that, lessons learned. We already had a lot of vertical assets. Then we have to create partnerships to get vertical assets in place and deploy and cover our current areas. Due to our methodology of guaranteeing speeds and guaranteeing quality of service, basically we just had to get into a technology that is reliable, not only into more organized shared spectrum, but also eliminated some of the challenges we experienced in the past with the sub-6 deployment that we had to deal with a lot of non-line of sight, limitations on the verticals of the home asset, such and so on. Plus, on top of it is the deployment process and the cost effectiveness around the deployment process. So we evolved in the 7 years, and currently our footprint basically is CBRS enabled. We're completely CBRS fixed wireless access, which a complete digital higher QAM modulation backbone network over microwave networks that enhance the deployment process that we have. You know, deploy higher QAM modulation infrastructure, and also expanding our fiber network with our backbone networks as well that we do. So that's basically is. So the challenges, spectrum. Spectrum has been a big problem for us. Now that we see all the activations of the PALs, priority access license, all of the incumbents together with the PALs have shrinked the general availability license over the SAS network. So it's been a challenge, and we just have to be creative around the problem. The clutter, it's not always. You cannot cookie cutter a wireless network. Whoever that tells me here that it can cookie cutter a wireless network, please raise your hand. You cannot cookie cutter a wireless network. Every place is different. Every terrain is different. it's very challenging in certain points. Sometimes you deploy a Band 48 network here. If it is an island, you got all kind of problems. If it is carries a lake around, terrains, hills, different type of trees, it's very challenging. So we just have to come and be creative around the issues, implementing micropops, combining the current Band 48 with different bands, and trying to do some architecture around it to increase speeds, compete against satellite companies that are dropping out higher speeds, compete against cable companies that are dropping higher speeds. So it's very challenging day by day with the spectrum constraint that we have. There is an auction coming up, Auction 110, which is with the different rules of engagement, but it's positive for us to have another access to another 100 megahertz of spacing for our networks. The benefits of aggregating this is you can provide, aggregating the Band 48 with different bands, including the LIA band. You cannot leave it out the question. You're going to shrink the coverage, but at least you're going to increase capacity. So you're going to increase quad modulation, increase stability, and also provide to rural America higher speeds that are required by RDOF when you go into the 100 meg profile speeds or above, or going into MDUs providing 1 gig, 2 gigs of service. We are working towards that into the urban and MDU deployments as well into rural America. So that's what rural. So on the high density urban areas, what are we doing? We have you guys listen our CEO, we're back into public company, we're trying to build Gigabit America, but also trying to keep up with the deployment on the fiber networks. With wireless, we can be there first, we can be before the fiber gets there, so we can be creative around the act with millimeter wave. And with optical wireless access networks, we can enable high density communities in the middle of nowhere with high speeds, 500 meg and 1 gig packages with the millimeter wave solution, and combining that with the 60 gigahertz solution that we're looking into. That is a very breaking into what we're trying to do. The 60 gigahertz technology matured from 4 years. I've been analyzing the solution for 4 years. And then it got mature into the point that it adds the reliability that we're looking into to deploy for commercial service. There are many vendors out there selling the solution. We just have to look into what is more reliable. If it's not reliable, we ended up in problems. RDOF requires guaranteed speeds, and we just have to make sure that we comply. So adding those solutions with the correct partnerships that we have in place here, we're going to enable MDUs and enable high density areas with gigabit speeds over wireless, implementing also E-band backhauls that can go up to 40 gig and a span of 3 miles. So that's a strategy that we're working on high density areas, on suburban and urban, and trying to get at least a 50 or 60% cost below fiber deployment in connected homes at this point. So that's what we are trying to be cost effective and be reliable. And what I always say is just cost effective wireless solutions that are scalable is the best way to go. That's pretty much on my end. And more questions on the QA session, I'm more happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Let me bring up Terry Jones from Blink. And Terry, the question for you that I have is, what opportunities are there to increase speeds and capacity when you start thinking about fixed wireless?
Thanks, Bill. Capacity has been a big issue, as everybody knows, over the last few years. Closer to the mic, is that better? Okay. So Blink has taken the approach that we understand that 25 by 3, 50 by 10 connections just are no longer going to be able to produce what the customer's needing. So this fall and early 2022, Blink will be introducing our new LAA product. High capacity scalable architectures for fixed wireless. Key to high capacity for rural broadband, it's a combination of your 3.5 and your uni bands, combining a bit of CBRS plus CBRS GAA, unlicensed 5 gigs, sort of checks all the boxes for us. We believe this is the key to the future. Deploying multi-band massive MIMO solutions that are cost-effective. Fixed wireless users don't need many of cost-driving features in today's MIMO products. The vertical dotted bar is what we think the marker to allow high capacity and scalable FWA in an effective way. Licensed spectrum is expensive and not high quantity. Unlicensed spectrum is limited on propagation and ERP is very busy. We believe that with a mix of 60 to 80 megahertz of licensed spectrum and unlicensed that is reasonably clean, we can deliver a 100 by 20 connection in a range of 2 to 4 kilometers. What the FW600 LAA can do. It's a very high capacity, peak 10 gigabit cell, robust SINAR, 18 to 20 cell dB across a 4 kilometer cell. 3.5 gigahertz with a 5 gigahertz beamforming arrays complement each other and creating multiple coverage layers. Last single form beam can operate on different channel combo functions of availability, flexibility, and resilience at its best. And you can see right here, we'll go to this next slide. The first is our FW600 with 1cc and 3.5 gigahertz reuse. Then you come back in and you overlay that with a 1cc and a 3.5 gig reuse of 1 with 5 gigs. You can look at that center section there. 2 kilometers now, we're seeing almost 100% coverage of speeds at over 100 megs. The FW300 LAA, which will be available late this fall, non-expensive spectrum license required, 3 by 20 megahertz with sectorials, 4 to 6 sectors of deployment, units, software configurable. You can see there 3cc, 2 by 20 megahertz spectrum is going to deliver the speeds of over 100 megs is what we're seeing. Excellent low density play, 600 active users per cell with an average of 1 gig over an 8 kilometer. Unit will capture best channels available for each sector, easy to deploy and future-proof for non-licensed spectrum holders. The FAA 600 LTE-U, cognitive and self-configurable, as simple as Wi-Fi, scales to high user density, 24 active users cells. We've got 4 sectors with 6 beams with a 3cc for up to 11 gigs per site, software configuration of FCC, either band 48 or band 48. Band 48 frequency reuse will be coordinated intersite with the SAS. Band 46 frequency reuse will be opportunistic based on the eNodeB and the CPE band scanning. Each beam component carrier will be benefit in all band measurements. Each beam can use a frequency combination function available in Spectrum Purse 2 CBRS plus 2 CBRS plus 1 uni. The network will continue operation access even if the CBRS is suspended, so it will fall back over to the uni. And we'll save the questions for the end.
Terry, thank you. I'm going to bring up Adi Nativ from Radwin. And Adi, the question for you is really speed, capacity, demand. How do the Radwin products evolve to support all that?
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us. Radwin had been around for quite a while. We've been providing solutions, fixed wireless solutions to over 170 countries, but the US is definitely our prominent market, and predominantly in rural areas. We have over 200 service providers deploying our solutions. Now our portfolio have evolved over the past few years, and I'm going to demonstrate how, due to the demand in rural areas. So looking into the rural market, a lot had been said about what it is. We all know it's big. We all know there is a demand, and we all know there is a gap. But the gap is not just because the rural stays behind. It's also because the urban drives forward. Fiber technologies enable broadband applications that broaden the demand and broaden the gap. But the important thing to recognize and to realize about the rural market is that it's not a uniform market. When you look into the rural market, there are farms and remote communities, but there are also towns. There are also more high ARPU communities and then very low ARPU communities. So there is no one silver bullet. So to overcome the challenges, we need different solutions, a wider portfolio. We need to use multiple bands, and we need to drive more capacity to a greater reach. That's pretty obvious. I think the main challenge is how do we do that and keeping it with a low total cost of ownership, and the key is operations, and I'm going to talk about that. So traditionally, fixed wireless access service providers and fixed wireless access equipment providers were providing what we call mid-band solutions, whether it's CBRS, 5.8, 5.x, and very, very soon we're going to have a lot of spectrum thanks to the new 6 gigahertz initiative. So we're driving more and more capacity, more and more reach into those solutions. But that's not going to be enough, because there is a limitation to how far mid-band can go and how much capacity it can drive. And that's why we're complementing that solution with low-band solutions. We're back to low bands in order to go further out. And we need to add some high-band solution, millimeter wave solutions. And you're going to see that across the board. You're going to see a lot of that. You see a lot of that coming from Radwin. So let's just explain. Taking the mid-band solutions, there are plenty of technologies out there. A lot had been developed. The problem with taking those technologies to rural areas had been cost. So if you look at fixed wireless solutions, you typically see high-end solutions with excellent, amazing, advanced technologies, but pretty expensive. And then what we call the lower-end solutions going to the more rural markets. So what we've done, we've spent a lot of our resources into taking those advanced technologies and bringing them into the lower cost rural-oriented portfolio. So basically, for example, we have just announced a new product called Neo, where we are trying to change the paradigm between quality and price. We're actually taking advanced technologies and reducing the cost significantly. For those who are familiar with what we call low-end solutions or rural solutions, you'd be surprised to see how much of the more advanced technologies are now into that product line. So that's the mid-band. In the low band, we need to use other bands like UHF bands and try to use TV white space. I'm saying try to use TV white space because it had been tried before. Why isn't it working? Because there are broadcasters out there and there are not enough channels and spectrum out there to use. And the main challenge was to find where there are enough channels, where I can use that spectrum for actual broadband deployment. What we've invested in that case is tools to enable service provider to very, very quickly analyze the spectrum and say, can I use TV white space? Are there really enough channels out there to provide broadband to rural areas? Last but not least, we went into millimeter wave. Why is that? Because we want to be able to drive fiber speeds using wireless. In order to bridge the gap of the wireless divide, of the digital divide, you cannot leave behind rural towns and rural communities that strive to get the 1 gigabit that their peers in urban areas get. The challenge with millimeter wave had always been the range and line of sight. How do you overcome that? Meshing technologies. So now we're hopping from house to house, from building to building, from business to business. It's no longer the typical point to multi-point. It's the mesh technology that maybe some of you are familiar with from older days, but now it's running at 3.6 gigabit speeds per house. So basically, here is the vision, which is now becoming reality. Every town can have millimeter wave in the center of town, connecting to a POP, and then driving connectivity to the central area of the town, but also transport to towers, a new location that would use mid-band and low-band technologies to spread out the service around that town area. And the key to doing all that, as I said, in a final word, is operations. We are providing a whole suite, which I think is essential. If you don't make it simple, if you don't make it easy to plan, deploy, and support, the cost of operating in a rural environment is never going to come out right. So that's why everything I described needs to come under one umbrella of these OSS tools. I'll take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Adi. I'm going to bring up Terrell Turner. Terrell is with T3 Broadband. Terrell, the big question for you is we can think about technology, we can think about all the products, but at the end of the day, you got to deploy them. So tell us about some of the challenges and some of the ways you guys overcome that.
Thanks, Bill. At T3 Broadband, we're an end-to-end deployment services company, more than deployment also, but up front from the very beginning. And some of those challenges that we recognize are in the very beginning of the deployment cycle, such as site acquisition, RF planning, as well as engineering, all have to be closely aligned because one slight move in any of those phases can be a domino effect and can prohibit the deployment cycle from moving forward. For instance, if you can't find a vertical asset in a particular location, but you've already done your RF design based on that, and there's some changes, some change to that location of that vertical asset that you might choose to deploy upon could impact the coverage area that you're trying to secure there and the subscribers that you're trying to reach, and it also can have an impact to the backhaul. Another area, most recently, because of the pandemic, is supply. As we're all aware, there's a chipset shortage, and that's affecting all industries. Some of those effects that it's having on us and others in the fixed wireless deployment could be on the network infrastructure side, as well as the test sets and tools. And more importantly, as we're starting to see as consumers, it's having a direct impact on vehicles. As you grow your staff, as you change out older vehicles, trucks, and things like that for the crew, you're starting to see that it is difficult to find trucks and vehicles. As you grow your staff, finding top talent and maintaining that top talent is also a challenge. There are many deployments going on in the wireless industry and in fixed wireless in particular. There are different funding programs, as we're aware of, that are still out there, like CAF2 and RDOF. And then there's some government mandates like rip and replace of some OEMs that are out there today, as well as 5G deployments. It's consuming a lot of the top talent, and it's becoming very competitive to maintain that top talent in the lines and antennas as well as civils. And then lastly, not having an end-to-end service provider to partner with that can mitigate some of the possible delays, as I spoke of earlier, the domino effect can cause the entire project to be late to release for sale and so forth. So again, to recap, you've got site acquisition, closely aligned with planning, closely aligned with engineering, as well as the deployment, construction side of things. Then you still need to have someone that is very much aware of what has been deployed. For once you turn that network up, there could be an outage. There could be a maintenance issue, service issue. and having a partner to be able to understand and get out to the site in a timely manner to get that network turned back up, or to take that radio down and replace that radio in a timely manner certainly will impact how your customers perceive you and your service that you're offering. I'm willing to take any questions at the end. Thank you, Bill.
Terrell, thank you. I'm going to bring up Talia Jemison. You know, Talia, not like the tower industry needs another growth model, because it's a juggernaut that just continues to move along and continue to grow. But when you think about 30 million American households that need broadband, how does American Tower look at that growth opportunity, and how are you supporting some of your customers today from a deployment standpoint?
Well, American Tower has been helping customers for more than 10 years in the rural development space, so we're very excited to continue in that growth area. One of the things that we've really focused on is supporting those specific customers, looking at through the vein of, hey, there's CAF funding, there's RDOF, which we've discussed is 10 times more of the amount of funding available for customers. So how can we help them build and develop and meet their timelines? Well, one of the things that we've, when you look at our portfolio, we feel we're well positioned to help because of our towers. They're in suburban and rural areas. So the locations support what you need for fixed wireless. We have the right available heights. And we're excited about being a partner in this new growth space in this exciting time in the industry. And so that is how we're really kind of looking to support our customers and continue the growth and then bridge that divide between the urban and rural development. So another area where we're really helping our customers out is, hey, we've got this funding. How can we help support you in terms of getting you out there and getting your sites deployed? Well, we offer customized packages. So we're going to look at the market. Every customer is unique. What can we do to structure these packages so that it can meet your timelines with your funding, your deployment, so that we can help support you and grow you through that business? And we offer full turnkey development services. And if it's not something where you need the full services, we can offer, hey, where is this area where we can fill in and help you support and grow your network? So we also do that. We have a site locator tool so you can find our sites. We have RDOF specific area tools that can help you. We'll do an RF analysis to help build your network, and just kind of looking each individual customer and supporting them and helping them grow. And I really think that's where American Tower is going to be making a difference.
Thanks, Talia. So Jessica, last but not least, Crown Castle. The question for you is really, when you look at this whole market demand and you look at Crown's strategies and what you're doing, how are you implementing those strategies to meet customer and market demand for rural broadband?
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having Crown Castle on the panel today. And thanks to Steve for another South Wireless event. We're happy to be here after a year in quarantine. So you've heard from the fellow panelists today how important fixed wireless is to bridge the digital divide. And what Crown has been looking to do over the past several years is enable those deployments. And we've done that through asking our customers what they want to see through us. Oh, I have to flip through a few slides. And one of the things that we did earlier this year was launch a program called WISP Go. That program is designed around customer feedback, such as Frontier providing it to us on what they wanted to see from Crown and what we could do with our infrastructure to help enable a fixed wireless deployment. That program can be tailored around the technology that the customer is using, because we're very technology neutral with our shared infrastructure model. It can be around whatever spectrum the customer is using, the broadband demands that the customer is using, and we can really tailor an approach on what the customer wants to see. Outside of the WISP Go program, we have several forward-looking strategies of using our infrastructure with fiber and with small cell to continue to enable the market demands. We have a fixed wireless product team that's saying, hey, we have fiber in very urban markets, but how can we get that fiber to suburban and rural markets to continue to bridge the digital divide? So we're looking at a fixed wireless product through our product team that could help do that. We also have a corporate development and strategy team that's saying, hey, there's all this spectrum out there that our customers are using, such as CBRS. Is there a way that Crown can utilize CBRS to help enable our customers, once again, to deploy their networks? We again have an edge team that's saying, hey, there needs to be more broadband availability in the rural market. So can we bring edge closer to where the customers need it? So we have different groups within Crown that are constantly saying, hey, what strategy does the customer want to see? What does the market want to see from us? And how can we market our infrastructure in a unique and unmatched way? We really want to be a preferred partner in the infrastructure space, and through our current programs are looking to do that today and in the future. So thanks again, Bill, for having us. That's a wrap.
Thank you, Jessica. So let's open it up to questions for the panelists here. You know, as you're getting your questions ready, I'd like you to take away 3 things from today. 1, a tremendous need for broadband in rural America. 2, up to $120 billion of funding available over the next 10 years to start to meet that need. By the way, that doesn't include carrier spending. If you look at that slide, that's just what's available from the federal government in projects that are being considered today. And really, number 3, we sit in the catbird seat in an industry that is ready to deliver and has proven we can deliver at scale over time. So it's a great place to be. What questions do you have for the panelists? Okay, well, let me just open it up to the panelists. Are there any other things, as you've heard your other partners speak here, are there any other things that you'd like to highlight before we wrap it up? You good? Okay, they're hot, you're hot. Thank you very much.